got to do something different. I got to change. But I think that if you keep that mentality and you stay fear-based for your entire life, you're never going to make it to this positive, like personal development style of exercise. So at some point it has to shift from running away from fear to running towards pleasure or running towards something bigger.
Let me ask you about fiber, because I'm sure you know the answer to that one. So there's soluble and insoluble. You always see those on the label in a lot of cases. And then obviously it's underneath the carbs. So if you see like 24 carbs, but like you look at 12 grams of fiber, it's like, oh, you subtracted that fiber because it's good. It's a good carb. Is that the case? Is that truth? Or is that myth? And can you speak to that a little bit? And what does fiber do for the body?
Yeah, so I like fiber. Fiber is great. You find that in a lot of vegetables, right? So a lot of those, like for example, celery, right? Celery, sometimes people will say has a negative caloric load because it takes your body more energy to process it out than actually exists in the plant. So celery is filled with insoluble fiber. You find it in your teeth as you eat it, right? But so what's happening is that like this will pass through your digestive system, through your small intestine, at your colon, and it'll actually sometimes pull out other stuff that gets trapped in there. So fiber can have a really positive effect. But the new science, this new math that we've been seeing in the last 6 or 7 years of people being like, oh yeah, you throw some chicory root extract in there, now the carbs disappear. It sounds like a load of horseshit to me. And I don't know quite enough to be able to fully negate that. But I always tell clients, hey, if you want net results, talk about net carbs. If you want total results, talk about total carbs. I don't think that by sprinkling some fiber into it, you suddenly negate the sugars that are in there. I think that is like marketing at its finest. And I don't think the FDA knows enough to be able to put that together and be able to put the kibosh on that. So avoid the things that say like, oh, it's keto. And then you look at the back and you're like, that's 42 grams of carbohydrates, but somehow, you got a little bit of sawdust, a little bit insoluble fiber, and it's not carbs anymore. That doesn't make any sense. So
yeah, that's like the sugar alternative and the fiber. You get those two, and it's like, oh, you're able to subtract those two from the carbs.
Just like fake math. I just don't know that many people I think success leaves clues, right? And I don't know a lot of people who are very lean and very muscular who are like, oh, I'm only eating net carbs. It doesn't even matter when I'm having these things. You guys talked to Ben last a couple weeks ago. I don't think Ben is doing a lot of net carb math.
Good point. Yeah. And, but I mean, that is a great point. I'm glad you asked that question, Mike, because it's like, you see everything keto these days in terms of net carbs. And then, they're able to slap a carb, a keto label on it. And I was like, when did the math change? That's literally been just in the last few years. They're starting to market in terms of net carbs just rather than total carbohydrates. So it's very interesting.
Also, those labels, you can pay for those, right? Those are like a yearly subscription. So it's not a lot of, it's a little bit of the Wild West right now. So something says keto on it.
Yeah.
Don't assume, if I'm thinking keto, we're thinking high fat dairy, we're thinking meat, we're thinking eggs. And that's about it. Like there's no keto crackers. Like it's almond flour. You're like, yeah. but why cheat? Why cheat when if you're trying to go down this route, why cheat?
Yeah. Yeah. Great points, man. I love this. One thing that's interesting is I'm curious on this origin story, right? Of this little moment where, she says, hey, I told you your arms were bigger than his. How do you, cause there is even almost like an archetype, right, Nate, of a bunch of buff dudes who actually are just secretly deeply insecure. And now they find themselves at the gym and they can't, the only things they have no personality other than the fact that they lift weights. It's you're clearly not that, right? But it's how do you wrap your head around that? Or how do you actually become somebody who's conscious about these sorts of things rather than just a vain, person who wants to look good? And I don't know, talked about that a little bit. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
That archetype exists for a reason. There are a lot of, there are a lot of massive hurt little boys in the gym right now. The guys who haven't dealt with their stuff, haven't kind of explored that and are using their big muscles to mask, and I was definitely one of those, although I was never massive. So I was just a wannabe massive person using that to mask my deep insecurities. And because I thought if I had enough muscles and tattoos and my beard was long enough, no one could ever hurt me again. And I think that's the mentality. So like whether or not you are skinny fat, super skinny, overweight, whatever else, a lot of times people start their journey out of fear. We're running away from something. We don't want to put up with wherever we were at. We kind of start being like, I got to do something different. I got to change. But I think that if you keep that mentality and you stay fear-based for your entire life, you're never going to make it to this positive, like personal development style of exercise. So at some point it has to shift from running away from fear to running towards pleasure or running towards something bigger. And I think for me, that switch happened at the same time as I started playing with this diet, where I was stopped being so afraid that I was not gonna like, no one's gonna like me or everyone's gonna think I was weak, whatever else. I started to be like, wow, when I eat like this, I feel like I can bring everyone around me up. When I showcase what's possible, like when I am fit and do these things, I can bring the kind of just the general consciousness, my group of 5 people that surround me, I'm going to bring that average up. And so when I started to think a little bit differently about it, about like, rather than being like afraid of what people would think, but how could I make a bigger impact on people? That made a huge difference for me in my life and just my perception of training and exercise. So now it's a joy to go do it rather than I have to go beat myself up in order to feel good about myself.
Yeah, dude. I mean, I love that. And it's definitely like the way to get to a person like me and like my motivations, because it's almost like you have a moral obligation, right? You have it's part of your responsibility to take care of yourself in order to show up better for people. And, that's where it's like, even if you didn't want to look, like Nate with his shirt off or whatever, but you feel like you have a responsibility to leave the world better than you found it. You have a responsibility to at least take your health seriously, right? To take your energy seriously, to ask yourself, how can I have all day energy and raise, my energy and the energy of those around me? So if you're listening to this right now and you're like, yeah, I don't want to work out 7 days a week. Well, who cares? You have a responsibility to take care of your energy, regardless of what it is that you want to do for a career or whatever. So that's my little rant there.